Well, welcome to everyone to the PyroLife International Symposium towards an integrated fire management. I want to say good afternoon to many of the folks coming on from the EU and the UK. Good morning to many people in the United States who are joining this seminar. And a happy tomorrow to folks in Australia and other places who are signing on from there. My name is Lucian Deaton, and I work with the National Fire Protection Association on our wildfire community engagement efforts and international outreach. Today, we'll have two speakers presenting on, I think, really great topics for this first in a series of webinars every Wednesday until late July. There are over 250 people registered for this webinar. And we're very thankful that many of them are on. There's some technical pieces I want to share first so you understand the platform. There will be two speakers. They will each be sharing PowerPoint presentations for half an hour. There'll be 10 to 15 minutes of questions to be had after each presentation. So if you have questions for the presenters, please share them during their presentation periods. The chat function, which is on the bottom of your screen and then will come up as a sidebar, allows you to type in those questions. Myself and some other moderators will see those and collate them for that question and answer period. If it is easier for you to type in your own mother tongue for a question, please feel free to do that. We have the ability to translate it on this end. It'll be answered in English, but if it's easier for you to type in your own language, we're happy to accommodate that. This session is being recorded, and we certainly, during this, if you will be on social media and the rest, we encourage you to use that hashtag PyroLife Symposium, and certainly also find the social media channels that PyroLife has. With the recording of this will be shared as a blog on the blog platform for PyroLife after. Our two speakers this morning, Cathelijne Stoof from what I will attempt as Wageningen University. She's laughing. I got it right. Some things work. Will be sharing with us an argument towards a diverse approach for moving from fire resistance to landscape resilience. And she'll also be speaking to the value and the goals of this PyroLife effort. They tie very much into that, and I think will be a great explanation of what is trying to be done at this global scale. Mark Castellano, who's the chief of Forest Fire Division and a wildfire analyst in Spain and Catalonia, will be speaking about megafires and the occurrence of them more often now in a European environment, in a global environment, and an effort to try to identify future scenarios for that area, how to deal with them, how to understand them. We'll move first to Cathelijne. Certainly, Cathelijne, introduce yourself more and on your topic, and we look forward to hearing from you this afternoon.
Thank you, Lucian. I'll share my screen. All right. Hi, everyone. It's really great to have you all here. I'm very excited. Of course, this symposium was supposed to be a live symposium in Wageningen with a G indeed, Lucian, in the Netherlands. I'm really excited that we can run it online now. And I want to thank Bethany Hanna for organizing this all, for moving the live symposium online. Bethany, you're a star, and thanks a lot for that. Also, Pacosta Foundation and Cathelijne, thanks a lot for your help in supporting this. Before I start, I want to express that my thoughts this week are with our friends and colleagues who are oppressed by racism and inequality in the US and elsewhere in the world. PyroLife is a project about diversity, and it is and we really hope that with the project, we can, and by focusing on diversity, we can bring all these diverse voices to light. It's a bit strange to talk about fire now when all these other things are going on in this, and with all the racism and with the global pandemic. But I also hope that the project can give hope and some distraction. I'm also my thoughts are also with our PhD candidate Ria and her loved ones and the people in our region in India that were that had a locust swarm last week and that are now bracing for a typhoon, the first one in 200 years that is coming over their area. Once again, I hope that the project can give some welcome distraction between what else is going on in the world. My name is Cathelijne Stoof. I work at Wageningen University. I am the creator and founder of PyroLife. And I'm also in the board of the International Association of Wildland Fire. And I'm the Dutch representative to the expert group of forest fires from the European Commission. And in this talk, I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about. And then I thought, I can illustrate the need for diversity and the need for collaboration, basically with the story about how PyroLife was formed. So I'll be talking about pyrogeography, and pyrogeography is the spatial distribution of fire on the planet, and it unites biological, atmospheric, and social perspectives on fire. Pyrogeography recognizes landscape fire as something that is interdisciplinary, something that is more than suppression, and something that requires a landscape approach. And in my talk, I'll argue why we need diversity to live with fire. And basically what I'll do is I'll share the story of PyroLife. So I'll share how PyroLife was formed, but then also on what we're gonna do in the project. And then in the next few weeks, you will learn more about the project and the ideas behind the project, the value of this interdisciplinary knowledge sharing and diversity with all the speakers that we'll be having in the weekly webinars. So I come to fire from a background in soils and hydrology. I did my PhD on the effects of fire on soil and hydrology. And I looked at, so in Portugal, I looked at why fires cause flooding and erosion and challenges with water quality. And during this research, I had a small watershed in the Portuguese mountains that you see here. I studied this area for 2 years, and then I had it burned by the Portuguese Gulf, Grupo de Análise e Usos do Fogo. And what I learned during this research, so I came at this without understanding fire. But then doing this research, I learned that if you want to understand the effect of fire on soils and water, you need to understand fire. And fire is a very spatial process, but soils and soil hydrology after fire is also a very spatial process. So how those spatial processes interact, you need to be special. You need to understand both the soil and hydrology, but also the fire. And I see Mark also now looking very interestedly at the video. I'd love to hear your analysis of that, Mark. So what I did in Portugal, so I did my PhD in Wageningen, and my fieldwork was in Portugal. And I didn't just want to do that single fire. I wanted to learn about fire. So I worked with people in Portugal studying these fires. And here you see Ricardo Fernandes, Pedro Pilharo, Antonio Salgado. And I learned the value of all the knowledge that there is in practice. So I joined these fire experts to burn, or actually they were burning. They allowed me to go with them and to measure in that time it was the soil temperatures during the fire, and to learn from their expertise. What I also learned in Portugal is the power of local knowledge. And so every time, I didn't speak Portuguese when I first went there, but there was a small village across my fieldwork area, and the village of Sordeira. And every time I drove through Sordeira, I drove really slowly. I had a Portuguese car, but I certainly didn't look very Portuguese. And I just I said hi to everybody, and I practiced my Portuguese. So every time I chatted with the local people, and I asked them about fire and about the landscape. And I always noticed how many people looked up at me for being a foreign scientist, because the scientist knows everything. Whereas I was walking around there and I was looking up at them because they knew the landscape, they understood the landscape, they had so much knowledge about the landscape that I, as an international visitor, even though I was studying for a PhD degree, I didn't know all that. So this power of the local knowledge is really valuable, and I really enjoyed, even though it didn't directly result into a chapter in my research, in my thesis. It certainly made my research better. Those of you who know me know I do a lot of science communication, and that takes a lot of time, but there are a lot of benefits to that as well. So because of the science communication, I also got in touch with Dutch colleagues working in fire, and especially this guy here, Winand Sitzer. Winand, if you're watching, hi. He saw me on TV and he sent me an email through LinkedIn. He says, I saw you on TV. Do you want to have a coffee? I work on fire too. So, so this is a team that studies causes of fires. You see their emblem here, don't estimate, investigate. And they sometimes burn to learn, and welcomed me to also join their meetings and again learn from them. So while I was doing my PhD research in Portugal on the effects of fires, I realized that I never thought about fire in the Netherlands. But there was certainly fire in the Netherlands, and this is a photo I took last around New Year's Eve in the dunes near School along the coast of the Netherlands. And there was a fire there in 2009, and I must say they did a lot of logging work after that. So, but you can still see some bare trees standing. And what is really nice is they did some science communications. They have the route, which means the soot route. It's a walking route to show people through the burnt area. So when I was doing my PhD about fire effects, mostly in Portugal, I realized that there was fire in the Netherlands. There were no reliable fire statistics being collected. There was very low awareness. Every time there was a fire that in Portuguese standards would be very small, they would call it a big fire and a forest fire, even though something else in the forest was burning. And I realized that here in the Netherlands, we're really, really good at water, but we don't apply the lessons from our water management to fire. So basically, we're prepared for this, but the future is here already. We have fires in the Netherlands, and we have fires in Northwestern Europe. And I think that this summer and last summer in 2018 have very well demonstrated that. At the same time, I saw these challenges in Southern Europe. There's a lot of fire knowledge in Southern Europe, and fires are becoming increasingly challenging, and I bet Mark will talk more about that. This is a photo I got from Tiago Oliveira from Agif in Portugal, and that shows one of the fires in Portugal in October 2017. What we see in Southern Europe is there's a long history of land abandonment, and there's also very little prevention being done, also because there are very few people left in rural areas. At the same time, you see that decision making is often top down, whereas in our water management, we have a lot of bottom up processes. And then landscape design and planning are challenging as well. So I was thinking, and I've been thinking about this for 10 years before I submitted PyroLife, before we submitted PyroLife, is that there are a lot of opportunities, and basically the bottom line is we need to go from fire suppression to living with fire, because we cannot always suppress fire, and fire is not necessarily bad. It can be very good. And so we need to accept fire as a natural process that needs to be managed. And airplanes, more airplanes are not the solution. Manage the fuel. We need to manage the fuel in strategic places. We need to educate people. We need to collaborate across disciplines. And I often heard here in the Netherlands and elsewhere in Northwestern Europe, we are unique. And I see that there are people who in regions where fire is new, people tend to reinvent the wheel. Whereas we have so much fire knowledge in the world and even so close nearby in Southern Europe. And I like really what Mark also now mentioned when we talked about this in the introduction series for our 15 PhD candidates. He says fire, there are a lot of dialects. And so fire is all the same language, but we need to understand the dialects. So we need to collaborate across countries. We need to collaborate across disciplines and risks. And also we need to connect academia and practice. And we need to better investigate and better work with academics need to better work with practice to understand what the needs are. And then and at the same time, if we do that and if we better work with practice, we can design our work such and that the knowledge that we have can be better transferred to practice. And we need to embrace social diversity. And that came, so I gave you the story of how these first 3 points came into my mind. And then the social diversity came basically when, after my PhD, I did a postdoc at Cornell University in the US. And then I came back and I was hired to work in a group where I was the only female staff member. The only other woman who was amongst the staff was their secretary. And I often had the question, do you miss female role models in science? And I always thought that was nonsense because I didn't miss them. I didn't think it was necessary. But I was hired on a Wednesday and before the end of the week, I walked into my boss's office and I told him, I understand now why there are women's networks, because I felt alien. And I kept track of the number of women participating in meetings for a year or so, maybe 2 years. And it was always about 10, 15, 20%. Then, so that was in 2014. Then Me Too came in 2017. And I started thinking about harassment. And I realized that I had been harassed and I had not talked about this with people. And I had no clue why I didn't talk about this with people. And so I started talking about harassment. I started talking about things that happened to me, like a hand between my bottom at a professional event, or comments that are inappropriate. And when you talk about these things, other people will start talking about them too, and you learn that there's a lot of stuff going on, and often the women and but also men that are not white and hetero and with the majority, they recognize this. But there are a lot of faces also like, what is going on? So there is not a safe working climate, and we need to talk about harassment, and we need to create this safe working climate to create this bystander intervention, to create a space where everybody feels safe to share their ideas. And so this is why I go again to this diversity that is needed. If we create this safe space, if we create a diverse space where people feel safe to work and to speak out, then we can approach this living with fire from the range of perspectives that there are in the world. So basically, linking to the project, what we need is this integration. We need living with fire, we need interdisciplinarity, we need teamwork, we need knowledge sharing, social diversity, we need also risk communication, we need people to be aware of knowns and unknowns. And at the same time, the standard paradigm seems to be that fire is bad, and scientific excellence is measured usually based on individualistic things, on monodisciplinary excellence, and on how many things you publish academically. So this is where these innovative training networks come in from the European Commission. And the goal of or the aim of ITN projects, and PyroLife is an ITN project, the aim is to train a new generation of creative, entrepreneurial, and innovative early stage researchers able to face current and future challenges and to convert knowledge and ideas into products and services for economic and social benefit. So this is the main aim of PyroLife. And so the ITN calls are not a call about fire, they are a call for training of doctoral candidates or early stage researchers. And we wrote this about fire. So then I had these ideas, and my husband was telling me, you need to write an ITN, you need to write an ITN, because he saw this opportunity of linking this to training people in a new way. And I'm showing some faces that you might know. This guy in the middle here is Alex Held, and this is Eduard Plana. And they organize these net risk workshops. This one was in Solsona, this one was in Cagliari in Sardinia. And those were the first stakeholder workshops that I was invited to. And basically that gave me a platform to talk to people that were not working in academia or only solely working in academia. And so I had a lot of conversations with Eduard and with Alex. The other guys you see here are Craig Hope from Wales and Kieran Nugent from Ireland. They're not directly involved in PyroLife, but they're part of the network, so they do awesome work too. So basically, I had a lot of discussions with people working outside of academia and also some with people working in academia, asking, okay, what are the needs? What does Europe need in terms of living with fire? And instrumental in this was also Nuria Prats from the Pacosa Foundation. Because when we started building up PyroLife, I mean, I know a lot of people, but I don't know everyone. And it was, building PyroLife was a really big puzzle because I wanted to have this diversity. I wanted to have an equal balance between North and South. I wanted to have a good spread across the disciplines. We needed partners from science and from practice. So Nuria was absolutely fantastic because I would write her an email saying, Nuria, do you have it was almost like a card game. Do you have a non-academic organization or maybe company from Southern Europe who focuses on fire behavior, for instance, or a Northern European organization, preferably in emergency management. And every time, within a day, she had arranged something, and that was truly fantastic. So then, with Nick Kettridge, we had some writing sessions and some brainstorm sessions. And then Peter, my husband, Peter Vermeulen from the graduate school VMEC, he helped create the didactical approach for the PyroLife training. And well, the rest is basically history. And I'm sure I'm forgetting people here, and I apologize for that. Because this is, it was something that I could not have done on my own. And it was really great to do this with the team. So PyroLife, we have 4 pillars of diversity. So the first one is cross-geography. So we're bringing the fire knowledge from the south of Europe to the north. And the other one is cross-risk and cross-disciplinary. And so that we are applying lessons from water management and other risks to fire. The third pillar is intersectoral. So that is in sectors in EU language is science and practice, for instance. So it's a better link to science and practice. And then the fourth pillar is gender or social diversity. What we're doing in PyroLife is we're training a new generation of integrated fire management experts towards living with fire. And I'm very aware, and we are very aware, that 15 PhD candidates will not change the way that we work with fire. So this is really a first step to basically train people in a different way so they can carry it forward And hopefully by opening up our courses and our best practices, we can also spread this forward elsewhere. So the project is around 4 million euros. We have 15 PhD candidates, and most of them will work for 3 years. So they all started in April. Well, because of Corona, we had some challenges, but they're all starting this summer if they haven't started yet. And then the project runs to 2023, and we have 21 partners in total. And the key concepts that PyroLife is about understanding of fire. It's about uncertainty, risk communication, and it's about integrating across disciplines, scales, sectors, and countries. So basically, we don't just focus on emergency management and response, but we focus on the full integrated fire management cycle. And I should have put the citation in here, but this is from the EU report, Sparking Fire Smart Policies. So our consortium, as shown on this map, so we have beneficiaries, which is where the PhD candidates are also called ESRs, the early stage researchers. That is where they're hired. So at Wageningen University, University of Birmingham, Imperial, EFI in France at INRAE, Palcossa Foundation, Techno Silva. So we also have 2 PhD candidates at non-academic, at a foundation and at a company. European University Cyprus, UTAD in Portugal, and the Open University in Catalonia. And then we have 11 partners, and these partner organizations are based in Europe. They're based in the US, Canada. Oh, I forgot to add the University of Alberta to the partner organizations, and also in New Zealand. So really, they're in many places around the world. Then in this light orange color, we highlighted the reach of the FAO. And that is because of Peter Moore's involvement and our aim to connect fire community in developed countries with those in developing countries. So this is our team, and we have 15 PhD candidates from all over the world. They're spread across time zones right now, all the way from India to California. And bit by bit, they're traveling to move to the countries where they're hosted, because everybody has been working in because of the pandemic, has been working in their own countries so far. It's really a fantastic team, and you'll meet them all in the next series of webinars. So what we'll do is, in terms of science, the project will deliver, or our 15 PhD candidates will deliver 15 PhD theses, all the way from social sciences to environmental sciences and engineering. And so it's a really, also in terms of the research, it's a really diverse project, linking a lot of disciplines. Then the ESRs, the early stage researchers, will also create policy and management briefs, and we have trainings for that. And we'll organize training events, workshops, conferences, and in addition to that, there'll be online training and monthly webinars as well. Obviously, as you can see here, we have training events and online training. With the pandemic, we're reviewing and we're planning how we're going to do all our other activities. The idea is that the research we create, the research we publish will be open access wherever possible. And also the trainings that we organize will be accessible to people from outside of the consortium. So if you're interested in getting involved, that can be through course participation. Also, if you are an early stage researcher or a student and you would like to participate in PyroLife and apply for funding somewhere, we're interested in supporting funding applications and finding the right institute for you to work with. So very much interested. And given our focus on diversity, we're especially interested in in supporting students from Black communities, from Indigenous communities, and other underrepresented minorities in science and in fire. Then also, we will share best practices, and one of the things we did is we created a selection rubric for selecting our PhD candidates based on open, transparent, merit-based recruitment, and we'll publish that. And there are other things in terms of work-life balance and also mental health that when we're developing materials, we will also share those for free use by others. And so this is, I think, my second last slide. So really diversity is key in PyroLife, both inter and transdisciplinary, cross-geography, cross-risk, science practice, and social diversity. And so we created the consortium based on trust and respect. We created a team of people that work inclusively, and this inclusivity and diversity is also an integral part of the training of the methods and the recruitment. And here are our balance figures with the big puzzle that we did. The reason we focus on diversity is because even though diversity is sometimes awkward because people have a natural preference to work with people that are like each other, we focus on this diversity and the safe working climate because we really believe it can make the science better. If we want to go from suppression to integrated fire management, we need to hear all voices, and that's only possible if the team that we work with, if the fire science community, if that is a diverse community. Otherwise, the voices that we hear and the solutions that we explore will be biased into a certain direction. So basically, this diversity, it's not just a moral obligation that we have, but it's really intended to make the science better and to make our approach to fire better. So with that, I really want to thank you all for joining. I look forward to working with the fire community, or we look forward to working with the fire community in the North and in the South and elsewhere, not just in Europe. We look forward to growing the network, opening our training activities and sharing best practices, and to explore new opportunities. I've seen questions coming in. So if there are any questions, I'd be very interested in answering them. Thank you.
Well, Cathelijne, thank you. And in fact, there are. Very good question just came in from Patricio, who's with CONAF Chile. He was asking, how do countries accept or face the concept of fire as a natural process to be managed when most of the fires, 98%, are not natural, they're human caused? How do you balance that challenge in different environments like that?
I like that question, Patricio. I was giving a class earlier today, and that is a class for social scientists, and I taught them before, and they picked this out all the time. So you say fire is a natural process, but it's caused by people, and yes, it's mostly caused by people. But the spread, what I mean with that is it's a natural process, is that the way that fire moves through the landscape, that is governed by natural principles, and also fire is a natural process is in that plants and some animals even are also can also be adapted to fire. Of course, humans have starkly modified the landscape. And so maybe fire is a natural process, but if fire is a disaster, it is a human-caused, it's often a human-caused disaster, either by lack of doing something, lack of doing fuel management, or by intentionally or unintentionally doing something else, like placing houses or people in places where there is a high fire risk. right now, this more philosophical way of fire as a natural process, I don't notice it in the discussions that I have with people in terms of getting prepared for it. And maybe Mark can say something about that later if he notices it. It is, I mean, fire is just there, and if we all, and I'm pretty sure Patricia will agree, if we always stop fires, that is not a good thing. So we need to accept it, but you need to have knowledge about fire. You need to be educated about fire in order to be able to accept it and to manage it in a place and the right place and the right time where it does what you want to do and not what the fire wants to do.
Very good. Cathelijne, there's another question that came in from Francesco, and he says, with fire such an interdisciplinary field and with so many experts from different subject areas, so many different nomenclatures, you mentioned cross-collaboration between disciplines and integration being key to bridge that. PyroLife is a great way to begin some of this work. He asks, for someone looking to broaden their areas of collaboration, what would you recommend is the best way to collaborate with a foreign, in quotes, area subject to them? So a foreign subject area, how would you collaborate within that? What's the best way to start?
Or I'm not sure if I fully understand the question. I can start talking out loud. So
it had frozen just quickly on your end, so I apologize for missing that. What they're looking at is that for someone who wants to broaden their areas of collaborations in fields that are foreign to them, they may be new to, what's a good way to start that collaboration? And how do they learn those nomenclatures to begin with?
So there's two ways. Either for somebody who is new to fire, what I notice a lot is that people think that fire is just something that you can do. And I stay close to myself. If you're a soil scientist or hydrologist, you can do fire. Whereas if you don't know anything about fire, then the assumptions you make about the effect of fire on the soil are really big. So if you're not right now yet working in fire, then I would advise to find people who do work in fire. And with that, I mean with actual fire. So not just in burned areas, but work with people who do fire lighting or firefighting, or who understand fire behavior, and work with them and learn from them. Read books about fire behavior, and always. So I don't call myself a fire scientist because I don't have a formal fire science training, and so I do call myself a pyrogeographer. But I think in order to call yourself a fire scientist, you need to have this really this very solid training of fire behavior, for instance. At the same time, when I work with people from other fields, I basically do the same thing. I find somebody who works in that field. I don't pretend that I understand that field, but I find people from that field to work with. And I'm very aware of all the things that I don't know. And so I tend to collaborate with more people just to ensure that I have those other disciplines right. And in terms of fire, what I often see going wrong is that people think from other fields that, and I think Guillermo is that calls them fire tourists. And so people from other fields that work on fire, but they make assumptions based on their own disciplines with which they take the wrong assumptions. And in terms of fire, that can be dangerous. That can be really dangerous. And it also, if you work with people who understand fire, you prevent those dangerous situations, and you can also prevent reinventing the wheel.
Yeah. And I think an expansion on that question, he asked as well, how do you grow the network? Does that help, that mentality help then grow PyroLife beyond the folks initially?
It's about making friends. Yeah, it's about going to meetings, and especially meetings with, well, right now it's hard, of course, because you can't go to meetings, but so I grow the network on Twitter. There's a very active fire community on Twitter and very supportive fire community as well. And then when meetings are allowed again, the meetings that work really well are the meetings that have a field component to it. So for instance, there's a conference, but you go to the field as well. I really like the meetings where science and practice join. So those are, for instance, also the meetings that Acosta Foundation organizes, or European Forest Institute with the SURE workshop. I know NFPA does those type of meetings as well. And it's about making friends. And I'll quote my former postdoc advisor. Somebody, there was a collaboration opportunity, and he asked someone, "Do you know somebody there?" And he says, "Yes, I know somebody who's very good." And then my postdoc advisor, Thomas Steenhuis, he says, "I don't care if they're good. They first have to be nice. And if they're not nice, I don't want to work with them." And so if you trust somebody and if you like somebody, then collaborations will flow. But if you don't trust someone and are afraid that they will run away with your ideas or with your data, that collaboration is really tough. And I've had people run away with my data and my ideas, and I'm very, I easily trust people. But the collaborations that work best are the ones where you just like each other a lot and you trust each other, and there's no barrier to sharing ideas. And then, I mean, PyroLife was the first project that we got funded in after a lot of discussions and a lot of chats and a lot of WhatsApp messages. But ultimately, something will work out.
Caroline, I will say, if you will stop sharing your screen, I think that will change the configuration for the folks that are watching.
Yes, this is better?
This is good. And then in 2 minutes, before we move to Mark, the very easy question for Marty Alexander of what do you see are the main research questions in wildfire globally? So in 2 minutes, please have at it. I think in this case, looking at the ESRs and what they're looking at, how does some of those focus areas hit on those global questions in wildfire?
There's no pressure. It's 1.5 minutes left for what are the main research questions for fire globally. And there's a piece of cake walking down the stairs, by the way. Thank you. I think it is how we can accept fire, how we can steer away from investing in expensive airplanes that are politically very attractive and that look very cool, to something that should be done on the land. And so how 90% of the funds in the world is being on fire is being spent on suppression. So how can we divest that to fuel manage? So managing the fuel, educating the people, creating resilient landscapes. I think that is the main question, because we can't keep on fighting these fires. I mean, firefighting is managed, and if the people are educated. Well, I did that in 1 minute. No, nice question, Marty.
You did, and actually the clock just ticked over. So congratulations. That will be the gold standard. I want to thank everyone for providing questions in. If you still have questions, please share them. Many of them will be answered on the blog on the PyroLife website at a later date. So it's still open for the conversation that starts here and continues online.